Check, check. Hello.
Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for this exciting conversation. My name is Claire, I'll be moderating this. Joining me are Nate Rocket Wonder and Chuck Lightning, architects of Janelle Monae's musical universe. She needs no introduction, the electric lady, Miss Janelle Monae. The three of you guys are co-founders of an artistic community in Atlanta called Wonderland. Can you tell us a little bit about the origins of Wonderland and how working together collaboratively affects the kind of work that you make?
Yeah.
Origin story.
Origin story. All heroes have a great origin story. Ours begins in Atlanta. We were developing in the arts. We founded an arts organization in Atlanta at Morehouse College while we were in school. And during that time, Janelle Monae was living in between three colleges in a little boarding house. And she would do what was called dorm lounge tours, which meant that she would walk through any campus, the three campuses, walk into a dorm lounge and start a concert and invite people to come see her concerts. It wasn't anything that was sanctioned by any of the schools. She would just begin this, and then people would miss their classes because of it. And so we saw her kind of just doing this. She was going around with a guitar and just kind of like, I mean, literally walking your dorm, sit down on the couch like this and be like, yes, I'm having a concert. Would you like to meet me? Just go to the library steps, and then she'd walk to the library steps and she'd be like, and now my concert's beginning. And so as we formed this arts organization, we had her do the intermission for one of the shows we were putting on. And immediately when she opened her mouth, the whole audience leaned in and was like, oh my God. And at that point, we knew that we really needed to build something great. That's a great community. And
I'll add on to that story. I didn't know that they even knew each other. And so I was sitting kind of like in a setting like this, waiting on my turn to perform. And Chuck asked me if I could hand Nate a pen.
which was
really and so it was a really eureka moment. And looking back, you know, we've been writing from Metropolis. We did Metropolis 1 for the Chase together. We did the Arc Android, Suites 2 and 3, and we did, as of recently, The Electric Lady. So all of our connection happened via a pen. And pen pals ever since.
And I guess over the years, it's just become a stronger thing. Janelle says frequently it was a Matrix moment. She said it was like when we all met, it was kind of like being on the Nebuchadnezzar and saying, oh, how'd you get here? And so, it's funny, it's starting to feel more and more like that as the years pass. And we were just at Princeton a week ago talking about the way we made the new album. And the new album was made a little bit differently than the album prior. I mean, it wasn't, some of the things were the same, but there was a lot of dreaming that was done to make this record. And we talk about that. Sometimes Janelle talks about things and we all gather and talk about the fact that at Wonderland we have a mystery school. We talk about the Wonderland Mystery School. And I don't know if the presentation's working. If it doesn't, it doesn't matter. We have the slideshow, guys? Yes, no?
Working on it.
Oh, don't worry about it. We can do it like they did it back in the Acropolis back in the old days. Yeah, we can do it. But the main thing is that, to say that all the way back to Egypt, you know, you had people who would look at the world and they would say that there was mind over that everything emanated from some point in something, some sort of absolute idea that gave birth to the cosmos. And so by the time they got to the Greeks, of course, they turned it into the philosophical school of idealism, mind over matter. Your mind is actually perceiving and controlling the world around you, or the materialists who believe that the world was the objective thing and the matter was of the mind. So of course, all the secret societies and the mystery schools were just codifying this Egyptian idea, going back all the way through Hebrews and all the other great religions, that believed that there was some absolute idea, some big bang, there was a big bang of thought that gave birth to matter, right? And so we've seen that in a movie like The Matrix, where you have the real versus the unreal. And you have them say at one point, well, there is no spoon. He controls the spoon with his mind, and the spoon bends, right? So for us, as the years have progressed, we've been dealing more and more with the real versus the unreal. We have learned that to make great music and make great art, it means also having faith in things that some might call fantasy. It's meant for us with this last album cycle actually really stepping out of your dreams and realizing that in the midst of dreaming, that this is a dream and that the song you're hearing does not actually belong in the real world, but that you can be a bridge to bring that song into the real world. So Nate, in fact, the last song on the album, I know, we talk about that all the time, What an Experience. He basically made the song half asleep. He didn't have the settings on any of the synthesizers or anything because he did it while he was sleeping, basically.
It was really, it happened so quickly. And like Chuck said, it happens a lot. It happened a lot on this album where the song would be fully constructed and it would be played by some, it'd be a friend or, whatever. And having to wake up and be like, okay, that song doesn't exist yet, but I really love it. And then, getting to the studio and trying to recreate exactly what you're hearing. And it's great because in those moments, it feels like it's just washing through you. So much so that I remember the last time I was in my What an Experience, after I did that, the music, it just, I went back to sleep. It took about 10 minutes. I went back to sleep, and when I woke up and I listened to it, I was like, man, that's amazing. It just didn't feel like I even did the song. It was really amazing. So, but yes, mind over matter.
I want to say, speaking of dreams and reality, the world in which the music takes place, the world of Metropolis, feels like a very real and self-contained and sort of consistently built thing. I think there's this great quote on the Wonderland website about how Metropolis is a city that you can only see with your eyes closed, which to me feels like the kind of thing that a novelist would do. I guess, can you talk a little bit about the importance of building this world and its relationship to the music?
Yeah, I think that a lot of what the artist's job is, in my opinion, is to be able to take people somewhere, give people hope. Hello? Give people something to aspire to be and to live like, another option, another alternative. And that's what I've always tried to do as a woman of color, as an android, as a Midwestern, as an artist and creator. And I just think it's important to create the world that you want to see. And so when we were working with music, which connects to the psyche and to emotions, that's a way to cheat, if you will, because once you have their hearts, you have their minds. And it can be a very dangerous concept depending on, the subject matter. People listen to music when they want to commit acts of wrongdoing, violence, when they want to make love, when they want to have children, when they want to celebrate, dance, all those things. And we've always wanted to use those superpowers and that understanding for the good and to better our communities and to shape the future. Idealists, we're supposed to be visionaries and shape the future to the best that we possibly can and by any means necessary. And with the work and the concepts, we're able to do that. We're not just talking, not just doing lots of presentations, but actually, using music as a vehicle to communicate our ideas.
You know, in terms of Metropolis, again, back to the dreams, it makes it easier when there's this world that exists that you can visit. I mean, you can really only visit it because we're the ones who are experiencing it and creating it. And so I can go to sleep and dream about this place that I know exists, and I know more things about it than maybe some other people do. So when I hear a song being played there, it's like, yeah, this is appropriate for there because this is what they're playing. And they can just go and make the song. That's what the song they're playing in Metropolis.
Is there like a map of Metropolis?
Yes.
We don't have a map.
Really?
Yeah, literally.
And you sort of draw from that blueprint when you're...
Yeah.
That's incredible. But the story too, I mean, there's this very strong sense of narrative in the Chase Suite. Like, it's the kind of epic story that you would normally see in a film or in a novel. And how far ahead thought out is that story? Did you begin from the very beginning with the entire sequence?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back before the Chase Suite, there were songs that referenced Metropolis. The first song, Metropolis, was never released publicly or digitally or anything like that. So, yeah, it goes way back. When we first met, this was something that, like, first songs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you sit down to write a song now, do you draw from that blueprint, or do you sort of write a song and then see how it fits into the story?
I think it depends on the song, you know. But again, it's really just, Metropolis is such a big world that the experiences can be individual, they can be collective, and they're varied, just like our existences right now, you know. So they fit in somehow or another. Sometimes it's just up to us to take the time to understand what this means in the context of this world.
And another thing I find really interesting about your work, and when you talk about it publicly, is there's this very strong sense of language. Like, you guys clearly have kind of your own idiom. You've invented a lot of words and phrases. You know, critics will talk about music videos, and you talk about emotion pictures. And it seems like you've understood something very profound about language, which is that, you know, whoever controls language controls reality, controls perception, right? Because language is reality.
Phrase we use a lot.
Really?
Yes. My father put it to me when I was very young. He said, he who controls the pen controls the situation.
Wow. That's right. So obviously you know that. You know what the poets and the philosophers know.
That's right. Whoever wrote it down is the one who told you what the story was, and whoever else is just lying.
So, how big is the vocabulary list here?
It's very big. You know, Shakespeare wrote, I mean, I was looking at something the other day, just talking about how many words Shakespeare made up. Like 2,000 words added to the English language. And so, you know, we're just,
I think to talk about Shakespeare is also to talk about someone who knew that he was building a nation through the history books. And I think one of the big things that we're doing with our Android narrative, it is building mythology for people of African American descent. Because there's been a lot of narratives and histories and epic stories that we lost in translation. I mean, as part of the diaspora, we can feel it. You know, like when you hear professors and academics writing about trauma theory, things like that, and connections and things, and the cultural remnants, and as Toni Morrison talks about the remembering, there are things that you feel, but to actually have the stories that you can tell, those are the things that are very important to create. And every generation needs those stories, which is why you have the creation of Superman during, you know, earlier in the 20th century, and we need to, it's like Thomas Carlyle, Sorrow and Cyrus, we need to have that back into the community, into the culture again. We need to tell those stories again and again in a new way, remix them for the culture so that they can pick up on them. I mean, John Henry is here, what's the new John Henry for this generation? You know, there has to be a, like, to keep doing it, you know?
But why stories about the future? Why not recreating stories of the past or the present?
You know, the future has always interested me. I know Janelle's been saying, I'm from Texas. My father's a futurist. I just, you know, one thing you can change is the future.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's some past things is cool.
Is your view of the future personally fundamentally utopian or dystopian? I mean, coming off of Nick Bostrom's talk.
Yeah, well, the thing was, his talk was so interesting. We talk about this all the time. I mean, the Arc Android really was an album about the singularity. We really just didn't really.
Please, tell us about that.
Well, you have to just kind of look.
We have a version of Tightrope. I don't know who's familiar with my music, but we have a version of Tightrope that is talking about electro-puppy magnets.
Yeah.
And it's a whole concept based off of singularity.
Yeah.
We have read Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Near, and we were really heavy into that, you know, theory and his concepts, and we were just inspired. We could not believe that no one else from the music side had tapped into these ideas, because we thought this is important for us to realize. And that's when we started to understand the other, when we started to see ourselves in the other. And when I speak about the other, I'm speaking about the android and this notion of a new minority. You know, the android is the new black. The android is the new gay. The android is the new woman. You know, the minority and the majority, often discriminated against, and people are often afraid. You know,
I think the idea of dystopia is so subjective, right? So, like you said earlier, in terms of like creating value and sharing values, I think that's the thing that, you know, the question is right now, are we living in a dystopian world? Well, for some people, yes. For others, this is everything's great. We're having a panel, we're just enjoying ourselves and talking about stuff, eating pineapples. So, but, you know, the question is, you know, will the android, when we have super intelligent beings, will their values be such that they see what we've created as a utopian space, or is it not that? And so, personally, I'm excited about the idea of advancing knowledge and whatnot. That's great. I do think that we need to be very careful.
Are you concerned that we're going to lose touch with the human element?
Yeah, I mean, I think that
it's happening now.
Humans lose touch with the human element right now all the time. That's what we do. We do stuff that's like, you go back and you're like, why did we do that? Whose idea was that? Time bomb, oh my God. And then, you know, but we do it. You know, so, yeah, I would not put it past us to make those kind of mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you look at what they talk about in science fiction,
right?
All the science fiction writers, they really are writing letters and figuring out, okay, but why are we talking about these other planets and colonizing things and these Martians that look like us that happen to be kind of pretty? This is something different. And I think that for us, it's a very interesting thing. We talk in the song Tightrope, we talk about balance. And don't go too high, don't go too low. So the question is, how can we do the things that we're capable of as human beings, create new worlds and vistas that allow us to develop everything from cures to, there's all kinds of things that we can do through technology that augment ourselves and our cultures and things like that. And then there's that the dark side, you know what I mean? And it's trying to figure out how we can balance.
Strike balance. Yeah. I think balance in all things, in your daily life, to even technology, and what we use it for. You know, it's a constant goal we should have.
How do you think that technology has changed how people create art and how people consume art?
I think it's good for the independent artists. You know, that's how I started off. MySpace was just becoming this big thing, and we didn't have a huge record deal or record label calling us at the time when we had our ideas, and we knew that people needed to hear these ideas. And so we just took the independent route. You know, there was once a time where I was packaging my own CDs. You know, I would be in the basement, writing, signing autographs, selling them through my website, and going to MySpace, putting up whatever the new song was. And then that was when we started to get offers for more partnerships. And once they saw that this was a viable business, of course, and that people were interested in our ideas. As science fiction influenced and soulful, or whatever it was that we were doing, as they were, people were interested in it. And you know, I think it's really cool that artists can speak directly to their supporters and their fans, and they can cut out the middleman. I think that's cool.
I think that in terms of, so I think it's positive for the creation of music. I think that in terms of the consumption of music and distribution, yeah, and it's positive for distribution. I don't think it's good for consumption of music. I think that humans don't, just in general, we don't have an off switch when it comes time for consuming things that we like. We drink too much soda, sugar, like that's just what we do. And I think that in terms of what human life is about, it's about having experiences and really being able to enjoy them. I think that having music on tap, like water, makes you devalue music. I don't think that people appreciate music in the way that they really would if they had less of it. And I think that that's just, but like, you know, that's what we do. We just, you know, more Big Macs, more eat them all.
And I think we're probably at that moment where everyone's realizing the long tail is not as long as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the tragedy, I think, of what is the abyss that was once Web 2.0. You know, it was this thing that was going to change everything. And then now you look at it and you're like, but wait, it's just like the old supermarket, except there's even less shelves. It wasn't making sense. You get the front page, everyone wants to be above the fold, and there's really only that much real estate.
Yeah.
It's hard to have a favorite album right now because there's just so much coming out. It's like you gotta keep looking for everything. Next week is some million things you gotta look at. It's like, and you just and because of just the way people are, you know, music is also better when you share it with other people. And so the chances of somebody else being like, oh, this is my favorite album, and your favorite album too, at the same time is lower with more music. So.
Well, it seems like two sides of the same coin. Like, you know, obviously your work is very dense with detail. I mean, there are so many like Easter eggs in every music video. Like, it's, for a science fiction, it's so amazing to see stuff like the Electric Sheep nightclub in the Primetime video. But even, you know, beyond science fiction, there's everything from like the historical avant-garde to cinema. And you know, it's so thorough, and there's this great conversation between past and future, this moving between genres. It really feels like the product of an age where we have access to all of cultural history. That everything you make feels like it's like condensed history into this kind of eternal now, if you will. But at the same time, that same access to information is what, you know, it means that audiences have less and less patience to really consume art as thoroughly.
And enjoy it. And really get all the Easter eggs we're talking about.
Yeah, and yet you continue to create these things that are
we like quality stuff, and we just were like, you know, if it's gonna last forever, let's make it last forever. Forever is enough time to figure out what we're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Okay, here's a fun one. If you could compose a message, musical or otherwise, that would be the first thing that an extraterrestrial race hears from the human race, what would it say? What would it be?
Something peaceful. They're gonna hear it, but they're gonna hear it from us.
Yeah, it would be the first thing that any alien race hears from our planet. You're responsible for it.
It would be some music.
No pressure.
It would be some music. I would hear some Stevie Wonder maybe.
Loves and
Me to Love Today. I would hear songs in the key of life.
That's pretty good.
Safe.
What about you guys?
Oh, you're asking me? I was thinking about an alien listening to Stevie Wonder. I think from my, you know, you start thinking about those time capsules that they have, and those things are always so cool, but also odd and scary. I'm just imagining an alien taking all this in. But for me, I think like it's interesting to just talk about the extraterrestrial period. That's one of the things about Metropolis.
Sure, yeah, I mean, that's something I'm curious about, because you're talking about the android as the other, but why not an alien? That's kind of the more traditional science fictional other.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that for us, That was a change that we wanted to make, I think, because we thought the Android was an important signifier.
That was the
There's some
next,
things that
next in line.
that we did, yeah, very
We
specifically.
don't know when the day is coming.
Yeah.
But we do
That's like
know through technology because it
2 records from now.
Yeah, it goes at an exponential speed. Nanotechnology is breakers, while a lot of people have already said it gets faster and stronger every 2 years. It's moving at an exponential rate, so we do know that we will have super intelligence very soon.
Yeah, that and the time travel, I think, were things that.
There's something I was reading the other day about aliens and like the likelihood or the unlikely nature of us actually encountering aliens. As the doctor before us said, you know, our existence right now is just like a blink of an eye in terms of how long the universe has existed. And so actually the likelihood that some other life form is out there and existing and is going to be around while we're around, it's not necessarily that likely. They could have already existed, died off, got super intelligence, killed themselves off, and now we're here just trying to repeat it.
Right.
Do you think it's important to search for it regardless?
To search for alien life, I don't know that we need to search for alien life. I think that it's important for us to search for another place to live. Yeah.
All right. What happens when the Cindy Mayweather Android story has been told? I mean, what happens? Obviously, there's a finite end to it, right? Right?
I mean, 2719, we don't have to really worry about that.
But do you have an idea of what comes next?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of ideas. I mean, they are kind of under, well, it hasn't been mentioned, but Chuck is a screenwriter, and he's written several screenplays, and, you know, I've written as well growing up. And I think that we definitely take a cinematic approach to music and the way we structure albums. And when we, like a J.J. Abrams Lost, or Heroes, if you will, or who else, you know, when you think about George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. I mean, those are people who we've had the pleasure of just meeting and kind of talking to and understanding a little bit how their mind works, but just being fans of their work. That's what inspires us. And, you know, you may not have the next sequel ready right now, but then you go to something else, you know, what else? And so I think we're very passionate about just writing and writing, telling universal stories in unforgettable ways.
And back to your question about the extraterrestrial, we were all drawn to really widescreen visions of science fiction too, like what Lucas did with Star Wars. You had everything from droids to extraterrestrials to, you get to see how all these different cultures and ethnicities and worlds and planets are related to one another. That's been a large part of it, focusing in on how the android can help us conquer. It was a reversal of a lot of the stories that you hear, you know, and a lot of the dark side of what you hear about the singularity. So in some respects, as dystopian as the atmosphere and everything is, we're at least telling kind of an optimistic, salvific story about what technology can do for us, even in the end times. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where salvation is like the ultimate program.
It's really our sacrifice, just in case we get overtaken, that we decided to make an album about the android who was great.
Yeah, so that
So
like,
they can listen to that and hopefully
they'll
We
prepare
take quite
us.
seriously. We're gonna make sure they know that.
Amazing. You're very transparent about your influences. It seems to me, and obviously we were talking about the Easter eggs in your videos, and the liner notes, the Arch Android, which have like such specific citations of every single thing that someone's sort of influenced by. Why this commitment to transparency? Why not keep it secret?
I mean, you know,
It's a mystery
it's a
school.
lot of misinformation too.
Yeah.
So part of what you could be reading, I don't even know who wrote it. I just had a deadline, I need to turn in some stuff. You know, misleading. But I think it's great to pay homage to you know, those who paved the way and opened up doors for you. I find value in giving credit when it's due. And we're not at all, of course, interested in being a copy of any of our influences, because they already exist and they serve a purpose. But we're again very interested in rewriting history and making improvements where our musical heroes may not have done it. I just think that the next generation should progress and be better than the past generations.
I mean, I think all the illusions too allow, it just passes information on to the next generation.
Exactly.
Because the thing is someone will read about the essay or the painting or artist and they'll go check that artist out.
Absolutely.
And that is the most important, because that, Dali painting or whatever it might be, Tim Burton sketch or whatever it is, might open up a whole new field of art that, I read about it because I read the liner notes and I saw the sketch and made me paint this way or whatever. And so I think in a big way, it's just moving that river of creativity and imagination forward.
Yeah, especially if, there are certain core values that like musicians and artists, painters and visual used to have that are not here as a result of history just not being taught. And I do believe that some things should be preserved.
What kind of core values?
Well, just I mean, I can go on and on.
I think it's hard to, I think the way to quantify it would just be able to say, mentioning this and this and this and allowing you to subjectively understand the similarity between certain things.
It seems to me like kind of almost a scientific approach, because science is something that has a sort of linear quality. Like scientists work towards a goal and they pass that goal to the next generation, and everyone cites the people that came before them, and you move towards this like ineffable thing in the future that is, knowing the answer to the entire universe.
Right.
Which is, I feel like artists don't really usually do that, because art is such an individualist pursuit. I guess my question here is, if you are in that tradition, what are you moving towards? What is the end goal? Do you want to explain the universe the way that scientists do? What is the analog that you love?
I think for me, lately it's been, I know we talked about it a lot during the Make Your Electric Lady. It's been about increasing feminization in the world.
Absolutely.
And about using that to increase peace on planet Earth, and then hopefully stretching out into the universe. Because I think that, peace is important. And, as Nate was talking about earlier, we can always think of reasons why you can build a bigger bomb, whatever the industry is, even if it's a peaceful bomb just to make money. And so I think figuring out ways that we can interact and we can create things that are healthy and holistic for all societies, and build worlds where women are in their rightful place in the community and are not denigrated just for being women.
Right.
I think is something that is the most important thing right now. I think it could be something that could even make computers act right, which is why I see Mayweather.
Female computer. Sort of on a tangent, but related to the idea of femininity in pop culture, the tuxedo. In a world where, in a pop landscape where artists are constantly changing their look or being forced to change their look, the fact that you've stuck to the tuxedo and that you guys as well have this kind of thematic thing, it feels very iconic. I know, it was not on purpose. I mean, I also like the white anyway. I'm on your team. In a much more chic way, of course. It feels kind of like Steve Jobs and his Miyake turtleneck. Yeah, it's a concerted choice, and it's one that's made to control your public image as much as it is out of convenience. I mean, is that why you chose the tuxedo?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with control and taking back control of our bodies, especially as women in the music industry. It's a male-dominated industry, and there's a particular way when you are, trying to market yourself as a female artist and a female artist of color, that people have tried to marginalize. They've tried to, create this whole notion that we needed to dress a certain way, wear our hair a certain way, look a certain way, blah, 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 blah. So I think a lot of what I've always said, and I'm not into, quite frankly, it has been like this silent protest to challenge the status quo and to rebel against this sexist notion that I have to dress any other way than what I feel comfortable with. And I wanted to just redefine. Redefine, you know, what it means to be sexy. I'm a sapiosexual. I'm really attracted to ideas, and I love smart people. I'm not kidding you. As I started to get older, those things matter to me. You know, visionaries and people with ideas who can really shape and change the world, and I find that to be sexy, and I want that to be highlighted in my career. I will definitely, you know, show skin, but it's when I choose to. It shouldn't be the way. So I wanted to make sure that as I started to get more mainstream success, that I was able to take that message as high as possible and to prove that it can be done.
You know, superheroes were the same thing we did too.
Yeah.
It's so true. It also feels very futuristic, you know, because like people in science fiction movies are often depicted, you know, humanity is depicted wearing matching outfits.
Yeah. You know, the thing is though, the whole idea of us wearing different outfits is so new. It's not really, like, we all accept the fact that we're individuals now.
Right.
But really that idea was really something that came around like in the beginning of the 20th century. It was really not, people used to wear the same thing.
What, with Eddie Burnett?
Yeah, Eddie Burnett.
Oh my gosh, have y'all seen Century of Itself? It's like 4 parts. You can get it on YouTube, but it's that's another conversation.
But you know, the tux is an interesting choice though, because it's kind of like a retro thing. I mean, why a tux? Why not a spacesuit? Or
the tuxedo was transcendent.
Yeah,
it's transcendent.
You wouldn't believe the places we go with a tuxedo on. No, most people feel underdressed.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, a lot of free stuff. Try to go to Starbucks and ask for it. Put a tuxedo on, go to Starbucks and ask for a latte, and they won't even make you pay for it.
That's why.
People love the black cars at airports and they say, I think we're here to pick you up. We just get it.
What is the Great Divide? That's something that comes up a lot.
Yeah, that is the enemy. That is, it's an idea, but it's also an organization, metropolis. But the idea is what it sounds like, which is like this organization built on dividing people, dividing groups, creating distance between ideas and beings, and using that distance as a measure, using it to measure worth and things like that. Because, you know, and it's something that we're taught actually as humans early on, just to be able to categorize things, you know. It's like our measure of intelligence is our ability to divide two things and say, this is this, this is that, and then we achieve something. But truthfully, one of the things that we always try to get back to is trying to figure out how similar we actually are, and be able to find empathy and sympathy for things that aren't necessarily easily recognizable as similar to us. But, so that's the idea.
And where do you see that manifesting in our world?
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the people who did not pass the Equal Pay, Equal Rights Act for women.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're part of the Great Divide.
Who else? Let's make a list. Who are all the bad guys?
I don't know. I mean, I guess to define them may be doing what they would like us to do,
right.
So we're not going to fall in that category. But, you know, I think the key thing is to understand that there's similarities that we share, even when we think we're so different. A lot of times we really do similar values.
And it's
like water.
And it's also to understand. It's also to understand that evil, a lot of times, looks different in retrospect than it does when it exists in the world around you. You know, you look at the History Channel now, you see all the different things that are running constantly about the Nazis. To understand what was going on in Germany then, at that time, how did Hitler rise to power? What solution was he presenting to people at the time? What made them actually believe that he was the go-to guy to solve these problems? And then also to understand where America stood as this happened. And there's so many wonderful books just about the Garden of the Beast. I read that last year and I was blown away. Just looking at why American foreign policy was doing what it was doing at the time, how they were on the ground and they were watching it, you know, move forward. But at the same time, they had bills to pay. They had an economy to worry about. Germany owed us money, and they didn't want to step in. And they had this thing called the Negro problem. Yeah. So the German ambassadors were always like, well, let's talk about your Negroes, since you want to talk about the Jews. And these things, when you look back at history, are very interesting. And so I think we like to look at things from a historical standpoint and also understanding and probing ourselves to always think, I guess you could say, in a prototypical fashion, outside the box about problems that we're seeing in any community, and to really look at it and try to go deeper and try to think through it and try to see where's the future of this, if it's here now, and how did we get here in the first place.
And something else the doctor mentioned earlier was about the idea of what your values are now and how those change over time. In other words, when you're giving values to the computer, what does it mean to give values right now? Well, if you look, 60 years ago, Jim Crow values may have been put in a computer, and then you have that. So, it's important that you try to find and accept that historically our values change, and leave room for that in your own heart as you move forward, that your values that you hold so dearly right now may not be as valuable as you move on. Just like kids want to be firefighters.
Well, some of them grow up to be firefighters.
Some of them do.
And astronauts. I guess speaking about history and categorization, you're very resistant to categorization. I think that of various different groups claiming you, but it seems like a lot of critics have pegged you as Afrofuturists, as part of a lineage that includes people like Sun Ra and George Clinton. Is that a category that you're comfortable in? Do you see yourself as part of that tradition?
Part of it, yeah.
Part of us.
Yeah. We studied those people. We used to play Sun Ra videos in the arts organization that we started. We used to always play them. Bring people in, be like, oh, we're taking over the theater, we're doing this, and we play Sun Ra videos. And they were slow movies, but we did them anyway.
This kind of related to something we were talking about earlier, and that is that the subtext, I'm listening again, correct me if I'm wrong, of the Metropolis world is that, the dystopias or the futures that science fiction writers imagine are really the realities that a lot of people have. It's like William Gibson says that the future is already here, but it's not equally distributed.
Right.
How much of Kansas City is part of Metropolis, and vice versa? How much of the real world is it?
A lot. When I watched Fritz Lang's 1927, his German expressionist film, I don't know, for those of you who may not be familiar, but it was a silent film, and I watched it, and I instantly connected to it. From being from the Midwest, I grew up in predominantly, I grew up in the poorest county. It was Wyandotte County. And so I was able to relate to that constant struggle between the haves and the have-nots. And there was a quote that said, the mediator between the mind and the hands, those working, and those thinking and making, those who are forcing people to work to keep those who may be wealthy and more privileged happy. The mediator between the mind and the hands is the heart. And I said that's what I wanted to be in music. And I wanted to make the music that we create the heart. So I was never interested in creating, a red, blue state, but a purple state, bringing people together. Music has that power. It's a language we all understand. It doesn't have religious beliefs or agenda. It connects us, and that is what I saw. And I saw, my people in Kansas City, some are walking around dead, don't understand what their purpose may be. My parents, my mother was, her last occupation, she was a janitor, and my father was the neighborhood trash man, and my stepfather, just like my dad, worked at the post office. So I grew up around a really, really strong, hard-working class family who wore uniforms every day. A part of why I wear the tuxedo is to pay homage to the working class. I worked as a maid when I was trying to pay for school. So I'm really connected to the people, and I never want to lose sight of that. And I write my music for those women who I worked with, that were cleaning houses every day, may have been ex-convicts, may have been on drugs and trying to recover. I write music for them, and I write music for young girls who are, grow up in places like small towns like Kansas, and don't understand how their big ideas can come from this tiny place, and really for the people and for the minority. But it's for everybody, because music is a universal language.
I thought that was mathematics. Do you think it's possible to future-proof music? I look at science fiction movies, and the scenes that take place in like discotheques and clubs. The music always seems so wrong, and it's like the Mos Eisley Cantina in Star Wars, or the cave rave from the second Matrix movie. Of course, like all science fiction, it tells us much more about the present than the future. So my question is, can you make music that will be understood 1,000 years from now, 500 years from now? And do you believe that your music could be understood?
We try.
It's our hope.
It's our goal. We try to really do that a lot. My favorite artists is...
That's why our albums take so long.
Our favorite artists do that. I think I mentioned Stevie Wonder, Rachmaninoff. We can go back pretty far and really still enjoy a lot of music. And that's what we try to do. We try to make sure that our music really is timeless, so that the melodies really do still make you feel a certain way when you hear it a long time from now. We think it's...
And that the themes will always, forever be needed.
Yeah, we talk about telling universal stories in unforgettable ways. So that's really the theme as we go into our songs. We focus on this.
I don't know if we have time, yes, we have time. I'd like to open it up for questions.
Yeah.
Or did you guys have, did you ever get your chance to look?
We're good.
No, we're good. I think, we came all the way from Atlanta to talk to you guys.
I'm not exactly sure how the protocol works, but I guess, yeah? All right. Share with us at Sunglasses.
Were you influenced at all by WRFG 89.3 in Atlanta?
Say that one more time.
Were you influenced at all by WRFG 89.3?
WRG 89.3.
It's a radio station. It's a radio station, WRFG.
Oh, in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Is that the college radio?
It's in Little 5 Points. It's
yeah, we definitely know about Little 5 Points. I don't listen to the radio a lot, I'm gonna be honest. I just got a car, so I kind of drive around and do that, but
Her first car.
Yeah, my first car. It's not my first. Well, yeah, technically. But Little 5 Points has been a huge inspiration stylistically for us, because they have like all those cool shops, and that's in Atlanta. That's like a really great place to go shop music. I used to perform at Criminal Records over there. So that whole lifestyle and Plaza is an inspiring place for us. Yeah.
I love this one, 89.3, because it played everything, and it's always unknown. It's really cool. Yeah.
What are you interested right now musically? What's contemporary that you're inspired by?
Contemporary?
It's a lot of new artists that are not, people don't know.
Yeah, we have a mystery school. There are artists that the 101 Art Society that we're really excited about, but that so I guess that seems.
Yeah, I know.
It's okay.
We're trying to create the future.
Yeah, the bosses.
For people that are trying to disseminate their ideas, like you guys have done, that are trying to get out there and create, what barriers to that have you witnessed, and how do you see people? How can you help them break those barriers?
I think community is very important. I think that your community and who you're around and who you're throwing back and forth ideas with and cultivating sound, ideas with is going to be very important. Yeah, it doesn't work really with just me. I'm not here because of my own hard work and dedication and writing. It takes the igniting of certain energies, people's intelligence, people's creative forces, and like Nate and Chuck, they've been with me since the beginning, and I don't think it would have worked if I, had this. If I took the independent attitude in every aspect, if I just believed in that wholeheartedly enough to segregate myself away from people. So I think it's just really important to have a community of artists and people that can uplift you too when you go through the highs and the lows, because you will experience them, the highs and lows of your journey.
Sure.
What do you think are some key ways to help people in disadvantaged positions to think bigger, to believe that their big ideas can become a reality? Because I work with a mentoring program, so tips like that, I think.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
We need more mentors. So kudos, and my love to you is so important. With my busy schedule, that's the one thing I want to make more time for, because it's just important that you talk to somebody, again, who can answer questions, in those early stages of you figuring out if you're going to just accept and love yourself for who you are. Or, I'm thinking of going in this area. What advice? It's just important. Even now, I have to have mentors in my music life. Erykah Badu has been somebody who has been very helpful as a woman, as somebody who's had, the longevity she's had in her, bless you, the longevity she's had in her career. Prince has been really great about, mentoring if I have any questions about the industry and so on. I was just gonna say, what you're doing, just taking the time, you never know. Like it makes people's lives feel so much better and less heavy when there's just somebody to listen, for them to be a sounding board. Because sometimes when we hear the things that we say coming out of our mouths, it can sound like a good idea, but once it's out, I'm like, the hell, what did I just say? It's really stupid, bye, I'll talk to you soon. It's just great to have somebody to listen.
In terms of encouragement, small wins are important.
Yeah.
In terms of you talking to other youth, I think that just figuring out ways to give them small wins is a really important part of it, because defeat comes at us all the time. To have small wins to be able to look at and focus on and remember and celebrate, a lot of times helps us to get to the space that we need to, especially if you feel like you're in a disadvantaged position from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. Kind of starting to change that a little bit in a recognizable way is important. We call it, at one level, we call them layups. Yeah. So it's just like, it's not that the person has to win the lottery to become, hopeful about their future. They just need to get the opportunity to do something and then succeed on the first day. So it's like, it's the free throws, it's the layups, it's just not three-pointers all the time.
Yeah. It's also important, as we talk about, I think that's one reason why we tell the narratives that we do, to be cool with being the outcast in the community. Because when you look at hero stories, a lot of times it's the outcasts who are the ones who are changing things and bringing the biggest weapons to the party because they don't think conventionally about situations. And so a lot of times it's the kid who's reading books instead of joining the basketball team or whatever, and you have to find spaces. These kids need someone that they can talk to that understands. And then not only that, going back to what Janelle was saying about the other question, as Bob Marley said, collective security for surety. So what you do is you create small teams, like the Avengers, where it's like, okay. And when I was little, it was always great to think about compost because you always felt that way. You felt like, oh, I'm so-and-so, and you're so-and-so, and he's so-and-so. And it could be a bunch of nerds in a room, but this is that. Peter Parker was really nerdy. He was my favorite superhero. The thing is like, that's it, you know what I mean? You can be a superhero. You can change the world around you. And if you have somebody who controls water, but I control fire, so we can do all these things, and that's how it works.
Is that how you think of your roles within the Wonderland? You.
Okay, so you talked a little bit about, writing your music for young females that, might not be in the best circumstances. And, personally, as a young female, I find it to be really empowering, especially tightrope. But what is that? Do you feel any kind of, pressure being such a strong role model? Because, there's so many crappy role models, and you're just like, awesome. So what's that like?
Not everybody would agree. You're so sweet. What was say the last part?
Oh, I was just saying they were stupid if they said that. But, what is that pressure like? Or how do you handle, does it affect you that you have that?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, I think the pressure that we feel, or that I feel, is the pressure that I put on myself. Mind over matter. And I know that I'll make mistakes. I know that I'm constantly evolving, and that I'll make errors. And I find the beauty in it. I embrace it. I know that young girls may not necessarily agree with the way that I live my life, but I just think it's important to give them a choice, an option to be out there. And that's what it is. That's all I can do is just pray and hope that I'm remembered in the history books, that somebody is inspired. I won't get everybody, and that's not my goal, but it is to just be aware. I'm aware that people are watching. I'm aware of how important it was for me to have somebody like an Erica or Lauryn Hill or all these artists who I kind of grew up on out there. It was important that our voices were represented. And so I just think getting as much as that out there as possible, and just doing and then not worrying about being perfect, because as we often know, perfection is often the enemy of greatness.
Up here.
Yeah.
As futures, would you like to comment on the future of, say, faith versus scientific reason, so that we don't have clouds going around saying it's a snowy day, so there's no global warming?
Yeah. That's going to be an interesting evolution. It'll be an interesting evolution in terms of where we go. People like to believe in things.
Some
People. I think that humans just need to believe. I mean, that's just how we base our existence, on believing something's going to happen, and preparing for those things. Creating value is how we live our lives. And those traditions that we have been, some of them have been around for a very long time. And I think that it's important as we continue to evolve as a species that we're sensitive to each other as we move forward and gain more knowledge about ideas and as we try to protect ourselves from ourselves, global warming and whatnot, I think, you know, like I said, one of the problems about distribution is that anybody can have a microphone now and they can just, you know, act like they are knowledgeable when they're not. Media defines reality, and we have to really just be, you know, careful about that. I think that there are certainly enough examples of how ignorance has led to death, and you know, there's global warming, there's vaccines, there's a lot of things that we need to probably take a serious look at how we distribute the information around those things and really try to be more careful. It's fine, you know, that people can have certain ideas and hopes and feelings about certain things, but I think that when it comes to public policy, we should be careful about the way that we distribute information and kind of we should be more consistent about it and just, you know, yeah.
But you asked the question about faith versus science, though. Is that what the initial question was?
How like some Christians don't believe.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, I think the issue. Yeah, but I think the issue is based on the fact that faith for a lot of individuals is codified in stories, and when people hold the stories up scientifically, if the stories don't hold up under a rational and logical basis and examination over centuries, then they have some sort of difficulty with the story itself, which then gives them some sort of difficulty with the faith itself. And I think that, well, stories are bigger than logic. And I think that when you get to that idea of how do you codify the absolute idea and make sure that we can pass it along to children and to generations for centuries, you do all kinds of things, like talk about apples and things like that. And whenever you try to boil the absolute idea down to an apple and a talking serpent and things like that, and you walk into a room full of scientists and tell them that story, they just look at you. Well, you find yourself with a lot of smirks and other things like that. But I do believe that part of it is really getting back to where we started from. It's the real and the unreal. It's Neo in a room seeing the Matrix and plucking a bullet out of the air and that kind of thing. And I think that takes a different type of thought process from the average individual, especially in the age that we live in, where, you know, science, especially over the 20th century, has unveiled so many mysteries, you know, in terms of even inside our mind. That was a real big century for, you know, with Freud and everything else, like really getting into what makes human nature what it is, you know.
I think I would also say, just from a basic level, because I grew up in a Baptist, and I'm not, you know, pointing out any particular religious sector, organization, but I grew up in a Baptist community, and there are a lot of strong, kind of even radical ideas against homosexuality, against global warming, and some people pray over illnesses and they've passed away because they believe that, you know, God is in, I'm not, you know, faulting or judging or anything, but I do also think that we should take into consideration that if God is this person who created man, why wouldn't God create science to help us deal with some issues that we may have here on Earth? I just say, think about that, you know, and then maybe we can find some sort of balance in how we all work together, you know, and not be so divisive with our tactics. Like, this is God and those are scientists. You know, God, if God is this so powerful scientist himself, you know, God can live through us all. So that's just the thought. It's not my finite answer.
It's a lovely thought. This thing about stories and faith, I think, you know, when you're talking about that, the first thing I thought of was the fact that you read stories. I mean, what you do is these incredibly elaborate musical, visual stories. So if the narrative of the Arch Android is the apple and the snake, if you will, then what is the faith? What is the sort of underlying message, I guess? And we probably touched on this, but...
Yeah. The message is one of compassion, sensitivity, love, love in spite of instructions not to love. That's really the main message that we've been trying to talk about. Loving in spite of encouragement to hate.
It's a strong one. It's as good as any religion, really.
Oh, yeah. He who controls the can controls the situation.
Exactly. All right, how about you in the sheet corner again? Yeah.
You mentioned science, and science has really trouble construing.
We can't hear
One
me.
more time.
You mentioned science, and science also has really trouble construing with other minorities. But it's also a tool that helps create a conflict.
Yeah.
So I wonder, you know, you're drawing influences from science, but what is the role, what do you believe is the role of art in science, or other than, rather than the other art?
What is the role of art in science?
I mean,
You know, we want to say something about the question you asked. If there's a wonderful book by Harriet Washington named Medical Apartheid, if you guys haven't read that book, you should. I'm reading it now. It's amazing. It's just, it looks at the antebellum era and the Negro in America as really the dawn of the new scientific and medical age, because of the fact that the black body was free, basically, for them to run all kinds of experiments on. And then, I mean, but it continues all the way through the 20th century. It talks about how they were shooting plutonium and black patients right after they dropped the bombs in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and how they've been using the black body for centuries to do this. So I do think talking about science and its relationship to the black body is very interesting, especially as you look at all these technological advances that we have because of these things that happen in various fields, gynecology and on.
in terms of science and art, I think they're really closely related. You know, when you study biology or chemistry, just looking at things that exist naturally, there's such beauty in them. And I mean, you know, we're programmed to see symmetry and think it's beautiful. But I think, you know, you look at Da Vinci and the work that he did. I think that science and art go really hand in hand. You think about the relationship between mathematics and music and language and the ability to tell a story, and all of a sudden it starts to make a lot of sense how those things meld together. Yeah, I think that, and artists have gotten persecuted for the things that they've said a lot too. You know, they say radical things and then they get trashed. And scientists who say radical things, they get trashed too. I think it's, yeah, I think the relationships between the two, yeah, scientists were at one point in time the other, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's look here. Question.
Okay.
Sure.
About science fiction. Does Samuel R. Delaney cast a shadow in Metropolis?
Yes, it does.
What's your favorite science fiction writer?
Philip K. Dick.
Octavia Butler. Yeah.
The dog in particular.
Yes.
Yeah, the dog in particular. Because it was about building communities inside the community. But yeah, we're huge lovers. Octavia, Samuel Delaney,
Asimov.
Philip K. Dick, William Gibson.
Yeah, William Gibson.
I mean, there's so many people. You don't want to really name just one because they're also, it's like a family. It's like,
It's a tribe.
It's a tribe. But,
Do you guys consider yourselves science fiction writers?
Definitely.
I do.
All right. Okay.
You guys spoke briefly earlier about kind of the Summation music and how fast it's being released, the plethora, and I'm curious to hear, like, right now, this time, if you name one album that you are really, like, digging on, and, like, that's, like, that you're really interested in.
What you dig?
I was listening yesterday to Pharrell's new album.
Yeah, we like Pharrell a
I
lot.
like Pharrell. I've liked Pharrell for a long time now, so it's not like I don't feel like I'm necessarily taking a leap. And I've liked his music since NERD,
Yeah, we love.
since sort of FCWB.
I think he's a visionary. I think that he definitely, especially on this new project, he understands the importance of women and the diversity and our story, how our diverse story should be told. And I think that as an artist and somebody who has influence, for him to bring awareness to some of the things that we find value in, from women to you know, just music about positivity. I mean, that song Happy literally was just about just straightforward, uplifting, inspiring people, and it made it to #1 on the radio. And that to me is rare, you know, and it is something to be applauded. So I think we're big fans of what he's doing and how he's bringing awareness to things that we think are so important and necessary with his celebrity.
All right. We listen to a lot of old music. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff new. Yeah, it's timeless. I mean, I think I started thinking about questions like this, and I always think about Funkadelic. It doesn't matter if I'm listening to Funkadelic or not. I'm always listening.
It's totally true.
That's the in album. To answer your question.
How about one from this side of the room? Here. Yeah, there.
I'm curious about the balance between having your own identity and the process of fame as you move forward, and how you maintain that individuality with the pressures of coming across through the mainstream, and how that is influencing how you act in this way.
Sure.
Or being, not acting.
Yeah, balance. You said it. You know, I separate my stage persona and my private personal life. I make sure that I'm making time for, you know, my family, my mother, my sisters. I'm calling home to Kansas City. I'm, you know, at home, and I just have people who love me regardless of how well I do with my album sales or on stage. These people are with me. They're my tribe. They love me, tuxedo or not. And I have to have that in my life. I have to know that. And that gives me great pleasure, and gives me a reason to be here. And then I have of course, my career as an artist, which I look at as a constant painting that is not finished. It's an unfinished painting that I accept that, and I accept that there'll be some flaws in it, and that one day I may wake up and just love it, you know, I'm fine with it. But then I get restless and I want to perfect it, and you know, you go through all those things, and I just accept that for what it is, but I don't allow that to get in the way of my personal life and the time that I'm spending with my family, tribe, and whatnot. So I try to, I haven't figured it out. I will say I still haven't, because I'm, you know, constantly getting more busy. But I'm trying to strike a balance in doing that, and not, you know, not allowing it to affect my growth.
You know,
and
we
my
also try to keep
happiness.
things simple as well. Like, we still record in the same space that we've recorded in for a long time. And it's not like we try to change it. Like, there's no sound booth where Janelle records in. And, there's a big fish tank, and she records next to the fish tank, and the fish make noise, they make it on the album. That's just what it is.
Yeah, we haven't, you know.
Try to keep it like the same ability to see it from at least from the same spot.
Right. Exactly.
So as things change, you can kind of know that they're changing a little more.
Versus you.
Speaking of painting, it just reminded me that on your last tour, you were making these big paintings on stage while you were performing, and that ultimately influenced some of the themes on your new record. Can you talk a little about what compelled you to paint on stage?
I just had a vision. I mean, I am a visual artist, and I have a very particular way of painting. Like, my self-portrait looked like George Washington.
It did. It was
I'm not. It was ridiculous. But yeah, I have a very particular way of painting, and I was just really obsessed with it at that time. And I thought that it would just be really cool to sing and paint at the same time in front of thousands of people. And just the pressure of coming up with something. And if they didn't clap, that meant like, oh, it was bad. And that's literally what I kind of did it for. I was like, man, I wonder if I could do this every night. If I could go out on stage and sing and hit every note and then paint at the same time. You know, it was just like this experiment that I tried. And I did it for like a full year almost.
So how many paintings are there?
I have a lot. I gave a lot to charity. I used to give it out. Like, after the song, I would just throw it out until somebody kind of got hit in the head. And then they came, like, can you sign it? And I'm like, okay, cool, no lawsuit. So I stopped throwing them. And then I have them in storage. But what happened was I was painting the same image every night. And it was, is that a baby? So cute. I had this, I was painting the same woman over and over and over again, and I was like, man, there's something here. Why am I drawn to painting this female silhouette each night? And so I talked, at the time I was seeing this therapist. And not this, but this really important person in my life that helped me write the album, actually. She was saying, you know what, Janelle, you should come up, you know, with the name for this series and maybe do a showing, and, you know. And so I was thinking about names, like, what would I call her? And I had a hard time. And I knew whoever she was, she did not want to be marginalized. There was no one word that summed her up, and it was just energy, energy, energy. And once I started going through each painting, the colors were just vibrant, you know, red, blues, greens, just so just bold, and they spoke out to me, and electric, you know, came to my spirit, and I was like, the electric lady. And when I thought about that concept, I was like, what would it mean if the world was full of more electric ladies? Who is the electric lady? She's bold, she's fearless, she does experience fear, but she realizes that being fearless has to come first. And I started to just become obsessed with this concept, and I, you know, started to ask myself, what does the electric lady think about sexuality? What does she think about religion? What does she think about community? How does she deal with pressure? How does she, you know, who is she? And that helped me come up and write the album.
How much of yourself is in that lady? Is she you? A lot.
She's me, she's you. You know, you see her, she doesn't have a particular color of her skin, her hair texture might not be the same, you know, as the next person, but she, you know, she is so many people. I named Michelle Obama the first, Philotis, the first electric lady of the United States. She loves her.
What was it like performing at the White House?
Oh, it's always an amazing experience. We don't ever take it for granted. We've been there 5 times now.
Wow.
Yeah, I never would have thought. I'm saying this to say I'm shocked myself. You know, and they are just. Barack Obama inspired Tycho, and he said something like, "You can't get too high, you can't get too low," and that really inspired the lyrics of that song a lot. You know, and when you go there, to know that your music is reaching our leader of our country and our first lady and our first family is a big deal. And that's why, you know, as artists and as musicians, we just can never take it for granted, the influence that we have on people. You know, my goal was young girls. I never thought Barack Obama would say, I listen to, or Michelle Obama say, I listen to that song when I'm working out. That means that we have the potential to shape their ideas. You know, we have the potential to talk to them, the people to the president. And, you know, that's a powerful thing. And, you know, something that is inspiring and makes me more aware of what I'm saying, and knowing that it can reach somebody who can help change this future and work with you, in the universe to help change the future.
Okay, we have time for one more question. So maybe Janelle, you pick the person.
Let me see. Is there somebody up top?
Yeah. To your left up there.
To my left. Okay. All right. Hi.
So we talked a lot about y'all's vision, like the overarching goals and stuff, but I feel like what really defines anyone as an artist is like your process, your day-to-day. Like, what's your firepower? What's your water power? Like, what is the way that you guys perform your layups on a daily basis? What are you chasing?
Using all metaphors.
That's a good question. Well, day-to-day, we have our own recording label, the Wonderland Art Society. And my goal has always been, in having that label, is to pull up and bring awareness to more artists. You know, it's not just a Janelle Monae movement. There are people who I watch who are just brilliant and just really inspire me and have helped me become a better writer, a better singer, a better musician, and so on and so on. So we're really figuring out how to launch the next spaceship, if you will, the next rocket from Wonderland. And it takes a lot of me managing, them managing me. We play each other's, whatever we feel, we're very hands-on. So if somebody doesn't have somebody doing sound, we step in and we do their sound for their show. If someone doesn't have someone doing like Chuck has done my lights before and still does. Nate sometimes does my sound. I'll go to their show and assist with their sound. And there are other artists who we work with. So it's a constant juggle act of pushing that next artist from Wonderland and really putting out more projects that can snatch time from a lot of other artists who are getting too much time and annoying the world of progression.
Other than that, we send a lot of emails back and forth.
Emails have a lot of great information, so you can plug in. You say, did you read the email I sent? Oh, yeah, I saw that.
We send a lot of ideas back and forth. That's really what we do mostly during the day, is try to just hit each other with as many ideas as we can that are good ideas, great ideas. We try to act as filters for each other.
Our mailroom at Wonderland is the tour experience.
Yeah.
And so when you hear about the agencies out in Hollywood and how, I'm starting in the mailroom, you gotta start out on tour someplace doing something. And that's how you really problem solve, strategize, figure out how to make, feed the masses off of one fish. I mean, you gotta figure it all out. And we were on the road with Janelle during the Arc Android and from the Chase Suite all the way through. Nate doing sound, I was doing lights, and you do that, and you train the generation after you, and like she said, everybody just swaps, and we go into meetings, and we're managing, and she's managing us. That's how it happens.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for this. This has been fantastic.
Oh, thank you. You've been, give her a round of applause.
I'm also in a band. It's called Yacht. We're playing tonight at 12:30.
like to thank Amy Parker. Where is she? Is she sitting there? She's over there. Thank you so much for bringing us. We're doing some tour dates, but her brother Kalindo plays in my band. And he plays in my band. But yeah, we just want to thank you guys so much for having us. I've been very inspired just talking and hearing these guys talk, because we don't really sit down and talk about the things that we do, but I will say that I've been really fed listening to the doctor as well. I forgot his last name, but him speak and listening to you guys ask questions, and it's been really inspiring. So thank you guys for having me, and I pray that something we said you can apply to your life and take it further than we have.